Hello, sweet ladies. It's Menopause Taylor here giving you yet another video tutorial on dietary options to reduce your risk of heart attack. This is the third of 3 videos on diet for preventing a heart attack. I'm not like most educators to tell you to eat a low-fat, high-fiber diet and just leave it at that. I split it up into categories so that you can learn very specific means of eating in a way that prevents a heart attack. If you're just jumping into this education, be aware that I present everything in a logical, stepwise fashion. I start at video 1 assuming you know nothing. And if you start at video 1, you'll quickly realize that you know nothing. And then, as you start connecting the dots and having one aha moment after another, you'll want to binge watch the videos in order. You'll be so thrilled that you can understand this material so easily. I mean, you've been walking around with your female reproductive tract for about 50 years and you never knew the first thing about it. That's not fair. You deserve to understand this material. So I present it in a way that makes it fun and easy for you to understand. All you have to do is watch the videos in order. So this is video 171. We started this unit on heart attack way back at video 160. I have schooled you on the statistics, the causes, the symptoms, and how to know if you're at risk for a heart attack. And now we're talking about options for reducing your risk for a heart attack. Your dietary options fall into 3 categories: decrease your fat, increase your fiber, and decrease your sugar. In my book, whether you're using the first edition or the second edition, these 3 categories are not separated. Of course, it would be wonderful if I could get as detailed in the book as I can in these videos, but I can't. As you can see, this book is already quite thick, so I elaborate on the information in these videos. Ideally, you have the book and can use it to follow along. If you thought that all you have to do to prevent a heart attack is eat a low-fat, high-fiber diet, you really need to watch this video. And I hope you watch it before you have a heart attack on your low-fat diet. So to get started, let's go back to that long list of risk factors for a heart attack that I presented in video 167. Here it is yet again. The last 2 videos have addressed how to lower your risk for heart attack by decreasing the fat in your diet and increasing the fiber in your diet. So today we'll talk about lowering your risk by decreasing the sugar in your diet. So once again, I'll show you the list of risk factors, but with the items we've already covered muted in gray and the items we'll cover today highlighted in red. So now we're focusing on how to lower your risk of a heart attack by lowering the sugar in your diet and therefore lowering your risk of diabetes. So let's get started. In video 163, I taught you that the 1970s were a turning point in terms of what causes heart attacks. That's when the government decided to start the low-fat movement, designating fat as the sole cause of heart attacks. To get in on the game, the food industry started producing low-fat this and low-fat that. But when they removed the fat, the food tasted like cardboard. So guess what they did to make you continue to buy their foods? They chocked them full of sugar. So you had tasty, low-fat, high-sugar food. But they didn't tell you that. You thought you were doing a good thing by lowering your fat consumption. And you didn't realize that you were also increasing your sugar. But people thought that sugar caused cavities, not heart attacks back then. So even if you did focus on sugar, you certainly didn't connect it to heart attacks. Well, guess what? Sugar causes heart attacks. Now, don't dismiss this. You know I'll make sense of it for you. Answer this. Since the 1970s, do we eat more sugar or less sugar? Have people gotten fatter or thinner? Have they had more diabetes or less diabetes? And have they had more heart attacks or fewer heart attacks? The answers are easy. People eat more sugar, and because of that, they've gotten fatter, had more diabetes, and had more heart attacks. The reason they've had more heart attacks is because of sugar. So we have 4 issues to address with regard to sugar and heart attacks. Sugar itself, obesity, diabetes, and heart attacks. So let's address each one of them in turn. First is sugar consumption. Here are the historical statistics with regard to sugar. World sugar consumption has increased 3 times in the last 50 years. And this is in spite of the fact that the world population has only doubled in that period of time. That means that worldwide, each person is consuming 50% more sugar. The recommended upper limit of sugar consumption by major organizations like heart associations is 200 calories a day. This has been exceeded in every country on earth. Fructose is the most toxic of the sugars, and fructose consumption has increased 5 times over the last 100 years and 2 times over the last 30 years. High fructose corn syrup is ubiquitous in many countries. It's in foods that you would never expect to see sugar at all. All told, 20 to 25% of calories are from sugar these days. Now, you might wonder why we eat so much sugar. And the answer is simple. Sugar is addictive. Sugar acts on the same region of your brain as any addictive substance. Even babies like sugar. Have you ever wondered why babies like sugar? It's actually built into our evolutionary fabric, and here's why. There isn't a single poisonous substance in nature that is sweet. In nature, sweet is safe. So from an evolutionary standpoint, you are wired to like sugar. So the first time you taste it, it pleases you, and that creates desire. And every time you ingest sugar, you feel rewarded. Those 2 things, desire and reward, are the very basis of an addiction. Oh, but there's more. When you desire sugar and feel rewarded once you get it, you crave it. Seeking behavior is the next feature of an addictive substance. Craving is seeking. Next comes tolerance. Tolerance is when you need more and more to create the same effect. It takes more to satisfy you. So if you like sugar, you need more and more to satisfy your sweet tooth. And that leads to binging behavior. And even if you want to reduce or curtail your sugar intake, you find it very difficult. Sounds a lot like trying to quit smoking, doesn't it? Oh, and if you did restrict yourself from sugar, you'd go through a form of withdrawal. You might feel depressed or anxious or tired. You might get a headache. Your body would be freaking out about not having its sugar. And the withdrawal induces you to continue using sugar despite the fact that you know it has negative health consequences and despite the fact that it interferes with your quality of life. Ladies, I have just listed the defining features of any addiction. Desire, reward, seeking or craving, tolerance, binging, difficulty in curbing use, withdrawal, continued use despite negative health benefits, and continued use despite negative effects on quality of life. So the bottom line is that the food industry has added so much sugar to so many foods that you are addicted to sugar even if you don't seek sugar itself. They've put sugar in everything. Now let's move on to obesity. Do you remember when it was very unusual to have a fat kid in school? To this day, I can remember every single fat kid I ever encountered in school. And that's because there were only about 3 throughout all of my elementary, junior high, and high school years. A pudgy kid was a rarity. Now, most kids are pudgy. And there are a whole lot of downright fat ones, too. Granted, some of this is due to their more sedentary lifestyles with computers and such, but I guarantee you that the vast majority of them have obesity issues due to sugar. For the first time ever, there are more obese people than undernourished people, 30% more. And there are more poor fat people than poor thin people. Why? Because the food industry has made fast food, fat food, and sugary food cheaper than nutritious food. They've stripped nutrients out of foods and replaced them with sugar and preservatives. Sugar itself is a preservative. So the majority of food available to poor people is the lowest quality food. Just go to any store, mall, or sporting event, and you'll see that there are more fat people than ever before. At the very root of the obesity epidemic, or more correctly, pandemic, is sugar. Without sugar, we would not have an obesity problem at all. The two are directly linked. What about diabetes? That's the next issue. Do you know more type 2 diabetics now than you did in the 1970s? And don't say, yeah, but I'm older now and so are the people I know, because children as young as 6 months old now have type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a natural consequence of the first 2 issues we discussed. If you eat a lot of sugar, it's going to make you fat. And if you get fat, you are very likely to get type 2 diabetes. Now, why is that? It's because sugar is metabolized as fat. In other words, it's stored in your fat cells. And the problem is that when your body keeps storing a lot of calories as fat, it messes up your metabolism. Type 2 diabetes is really a manifestation of a metabolic problem that is brought about purely from the storage of fat. But sugar is one of the most significant culprits in causing it. And once you have type 2 diabetes, it messes up a bunch of other things like your blood pressure, your tendency for blood clots, and your risk for heart attack. And of course, that brings us to the issue of heart attacks. Sugar is why heart attacks are more common. The fat you eat is only one source of the gunk that causes roadblocks in your heart arteries. Sugar is the other culprit. The problem is that nobody is teaching you that, except me, of course. And you're out there eating low-fat foods that are full of sugar. So you're not doing anything beneficial for your heart. You're actually making everything worse. And unlike fat, you have to break your addiction to sugar in order to reduce your risk for a heart attack. So since sugar is a hard habit to break, I think it would be good for me to give you a few tips on how to decrease your sugar intake. So here goes. First, omit all sugared beverages. This means no juicing, which I explained in the last video. No smoothies, which I also explained in the last video. No fruit juice, no soft drinks, no coffee or tea drinks with whipped cream, caramel, etc. Those are desserts, not beverages. Second, if you cook any recipes that call for any kind of sugar, reduce the sugar by half. If you can't stand that, add some raisins or other whole fruit to the recipe. Third is the 5-to-1 rule. For any packaged food with a nutrition label, look at the carbohydrate section. Divide the total carbohydrate by the fiber. If your answer is 5 or less, buy it. If your answer is 6 or more, don't. Fourth, never eat sugar without fiber. I discussed fiber in the last video too. The way you include fiber is to make fruit your only source of sugar. And always eat the whole fruit. If you juice, you have removed the fiber. Fifth, look at all ingredients, always. Don't buy anything that has even a molecule of high fructose corn syrup in it. You'll find that it's in nearly all packaged foods, and that should tell you something. Okay, so there are your 5 tips for reducing sugar. 1 is omit sugared beverages. 2 is put half the recommended amount of sugar in all the recipes. 3 is only buy foods that pass the 5 to 1 rule. 4 is limit your sugar to that in whole fruit. And 5 is don't buy anything containing high fructose corn syrup. And finally, a word about the best and worst diets for preventing a heart attack with regard to sugar. Well, it turns out that the one and only thing that all diets eliminate is sugar. So that should tell you a lot. So no matter what kind of diet you consider, they all limit sugar. And that brings us right back to what I've told you in the 2 videos preceding this one. The worst diets for preventing a heart attack are the ones that include animal products and animal fats, such as the Atkins diet and the keto diet. And the best diets for preventing a heart attack are the ones that include a lot of fiber, meaning plants, like the Ornish diet, the low glycemic index diet, and the South Beach diet. If you want to read more about how sugar causes type 2 diabetes and heart attacks, you'll find it all in this book. It's very detailed. If you're not scientifically geared, you might get a little overwhelmed, but it is a great book and it is the best accounting of the facts that I have ever found. My goal with these lessons is to give you the logic behind everything and then give you practical ways of accomplishing your goals. The main message today is that you cannot prevent a heart attack by focusing on fat alone. The food supply today is so altered and filled with sugar that you're probably addicted to it whether you realize it or not. And it is contributing directly to your risk for a heart attack. I'm sorry to end on such a sour note, but it's high time someone told you the truth. And that wraps up the 3 videos on dietary options for preventing a heart attack. That means that next week we'll address lifestyle options. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you're so inclined. And I'm always available for one-on-one consultations too. All you have to do is go to menopausetailor.me and pick a time. I do them on Skype, FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp, and I meet with women all over the world. So until we meet again, bye.